on behalf of the IFP School Voices team, welcome to our webinar. Just a few words about the organization before starting. Joao will help us for the technical part. Mei-Ling will lead the chat and will be pleased to interact with you. To submit your questions, please use the Q&A module throughout the webinar. Mr. Lobe's presentation will be divided into two parts. Each part will be followed by a Q&A session moderated by Wafae El-Ganawi Mourlan, supervisor of the Powertrain Engineering Program. Thank you for your attention. It's now time to hand over to Christine Travers, Dean of IFP School. So Christine, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sabine. Dear alumni, students and colleagues, welcome to everyone and thank you for joining us for this 5th IFP School Voices webinar, service offered by IFP School since last December and dedicated in priority to its graduates, its students, its staff, and its colleagues from IFP EN and subsidiaries. All the trends in the energy and mobility sectors can be discussed here. Dear graduates, once more time, I would like to remind you that we are part of a big family, the alumni of the school, with more than 19,000 alumni active all over the world. You represent really a strong network and you are the best ambassadors of the school. To lean on a network seems to me really crucial for all of us, particularly in these difficult times. So it's a great pleasure for me to open today this 5th webinar, welcoming Olivier Lobe, class 1997. Since March 2020, Olivier has been leading the newly created EV Lab for Huawei in Nuremberg Research Center in Germany. Olivier has worked for more than 20 years in the energy and automotive fields. Before joining Huawei, he led the central driving intelligence for Byton EV in Nanjing, China, and Santa Clara in California. From 2015 to 2017, he was in charge of the powertrain technology and innovation division for Continental. Olivier has an engineering degree from the École Nationale Supérieure des Mines de Saint-Étienne. He holds a master's degree from IFP School in Petroleum and Energy Products Application, class 1997, the predecessor of the Energy and Product program. Olivier, thank you for having accepted to discuss the V2X, the EV powertrain at the heart of the powered grid with us. The floor is yours.
Christine, thank you very much. And I'm glad to be with you. And if you can all see my screen, then I would start. And yes, Christine, it's very important to be part of a network, especially when you see how quickly the trends are changing in automotive and energy. And it's great to have the possibility to share thoughts, ideas with that community. So V2X, I wanted to share with you the trends we see for automotive and energy, and what it means to have V2X part of in those trends. And after that, I would like to say a word about Huawei in powertrain. So it's something new, so for some of you maybe, and what we would like to do for automotive and powertrain, especially with Huawei. And then for V2X, I would like to go a bit more into the details of 3 concrete use cases, examples of what V2X could mean for us now and tomorrow. And I'm looking forward to get your remarks and questions as we go along. So the energy and transportations. You know that we are quite important regarding the energy needs. So it's quite steady on the share for energy that we use in transportations and to heat our house or to cook our food. So it's 60% roughly for Europe, and it has been like that for the past 30 years. And you can expect it to remain the same. Of course, I was not sure about the statistic for last year because I got some contradicting figures, but we could expect some drops, but the percentage might stay similar, I would expect. And what is not steady is the share of those energy. So today we are at roughly 25% of renewable energy. And in the future, we see a change. So when I look at the trends 5 years ago, nuclear was expected to grow a bit more. If you look back at 10 years, we expected China to switch, for instance, from coal to nuclear. China is still growing its nuclear capabilities, but the wind and solar, looks like it's a more promising trend right now. So maybe in 5 years we will see a change. But if we simplify, we would expect in 30 years to have an overwhelming majority of the energy to come from renewable energy. So where is it coming from? So you're guessing it's top down and bottom up, a push, and pull. So the top down is coming from regulations concerned from governments and for the greenhouse effect. So China wants to reduce, at least control the emissions of carbon by 2030 and to be neutral within 40 years. European Union is more aggressive. European Union wants to be carbon neutral 10 years before China, and by 2030 to have already 60% of the energy coming from renewable sources. And bottom up, so we have industrial companies, big companies want to be carbon neutral even sooner, so 2025. And of course, as well, every citizen is free to buy a carbon credit. So that's the bottom-up push. And you are guessing what the consequences are for the grid and for the energy distribution. So today we are geared into the balance supply you saw before. So what it means is that if we have renewable energy, it's going to change the robustness of the grid. So on the left of the graph, you see that from our colleagues from renewable energy at Huawei, on the y-axis, you see the renewable energy penetration. So from 0 to 70% on that graph, and on the y-axis, you see the inverter terminal SCR. What is SCR? SCR is a short circuit ratio. It's a way to measure the robustness of your grid. So the higher the ratio, the more stable. And the more renewable energy you have, actually the lower your SCR. So, and the trends, you see all the countries expecting to go towards higher rates of renewable energies. You see their RCR going down, so below 2. So 2 it's a big threshold for colleagues from the grid management. So not only that, so that's a consequence for the grid, but not only that, but when you have your power stations from renewable energy, like a traditional photovoltaic, the response time, the way your photovoltaic power station would react is to problems with the grid is not as good as traditional energy. So so the time to adjust for the voltage, the time to adjust for the frequency, And so it means that, of course, we have witnessed in Europe, especially because the grid in Europe is especially intertwined between the north, the south, and the east and the west in Europe. We've seen some issues, so blackout England, but not only in Europe as well. So here we have the event less than 1 year ago in India. So the response is, so there are two responses. So you see the first response is to have more legislation and to ask for the energy provider for renewable energy to adjust their technical requirements, specifications, to avoid damaging the robustness of the grid. So there is that. And on the other side, we got that trend that we are going to have. You would expect more and more electric vehicles. So having more and more electric vehicles, my colleagues from the energy sector would tell me, well, that's great, but you're not helping the grid because you're going to increase the demand on the grid with your nice electrified vehicle, whether they are battery electric vehicles or pure or hybrid electric vehicles. Yes, I will say yes, it's true. So we see the trend, positive and an optimist and a negative one, a low one and a high one. It depends if you are selling battery electric vehicles or diesel car, which one is positive or negative. But you see that today we are selling roughly, to give you an idea, we are selling every year 100 million light duty vehicles. And you see where we are in 2020. So it's still very, very small. But by the cumulative park by 2030, we expect to have more than one, even in the most negative, lowest scenario, it's it's above 100 million vehicles, the fleet. So it means that it will give us 3.5 trillion 3.5 terawatt hour of battery storage capability. And that's a nice possibility for the network, for the grid. Because if you have all those cars, or let's say 50% of those cars plugged into the network at any time, so you're adding 2 terawatt hour of energy storage capability to for your grid to balance, and that will be far more than enough to balance, to avoid those blackouts that we've seen. So that's where we have V2X coming into the picture. So V2X, it's vehicle to everything and anything, and it's for the data and for the energy, so communication and power transfer. So, and it means V2X for, oh, sorry. Yes, so it means vehicle to grid, V2G. It's vehicle to pedestrian. So that's mainly communication. We don't expect yet to have power transfer to pedestrian. Vehicle to vehicle, here it's both, with platooning and with energy transfer. Vehicle to load and vehicle to home. So I transfer energy from the vehicle to a small grid that is a personal grid, your home, and the vehicle to the network. So that's especially useful for the connected energy management. So that's a lot of buzzwords, and but the trend is real. And I will go beyond the buzzwords with the use cases. And for the trend, it's let me go to the trend. So the trend, we are already in the world. It's we are already. Sorry, do you? Yes. So for the trend, we are already close to 1 billion for 2021. We expect more than 1 billion for the V2X market total. All the 5 domains I just listed before, and you see that the America, Europe, and Asia are already are evenly distributed, one third, roughly. And so you would have the advantages you would expect from V2X. So increasing safety was not part of the concerns for the grid, but that's more than a side effect, and that was for autonomous driving. That's of course the first driver.
Okay, thank you very much, Olivier, for this first part. Can you hear me properly?
Yes, Wafai, yeah.
Perfect. So you're lucky you have some questions. We have questions coming from Maxime Chancry, who is my colleague at IFP School. So the question is about the costs of electric vehicle. So what do you think will be the key factors or allies to reduce these costs?
That's a good question. Yes. So for the cost, for the trend, why are we getting? Why are we getting higher and higher electric vehicles? So at the beginning, we had incentives, so that were hiding the high cost of the new electric vehicles. Now we have new technologies, and we have bigger volumes. So that's the two main drivers. And what I would like to see as well is the small and medium cars getting more into the EVs, not only the premium, because that would drive the cost down as well. So people will see that you can have a very nice electric vehicles for 15,000 euro. What would help to reduce the cost as well? It's the third point. It's the grid and the charging stations. Because if you have a fantastic network, then you could avoid having a very big and expensive battery, and you would not have to carry those half a ton, 500 kilogram of battery, where you only need for most of your needs 50 kilograms. So that would be the third driver, is that when we start to have charging stations in my village behind me in France, that's when you will say that the people will be happy to drive a cheap car with a small battery, because they know they can charge everywhere with fast charging. That's the two conditions for a good network.
Okay, so we have also, thank you, Olivier. We have a question coming from Patrick Oberto. The question is, do you have an idea of the capex needed over the next 10 years for the e-car manufacturing on this on one side, and for the electricity distribution network on the other side?
That's another very good question. No, I don't have the figures in my head. That I would like to take a couple of minutes to multiply the numbers that we see on that slide by the ratio of charging stations that we will need to install. For if you say you need one charging station for 4 vehicles, and that will give you an idea of how many charging stations you need to have in the street when you have 100 million cars. And the capex for electric motors, it will be switching the current investments from ICE to electric vehicles. And the biggest capex, I think Patrick is thinking about, is of course the battery and or energy storage as a whole. And that one, yes, that one, I'm trying to put a figure on it. I'm sorry, Patrick, I'm not sure. So 100 million car, if we make 10 million car a year, no, that's...
Patrick likes calculation, so...
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Patrick. Yeah, I think I would have to look that up, yes.
Yeah, maybe we can take one more question. It's again from Maxime Chancry. The question is the key driver to change carbon emission reduction, or the value created by the electric vehicle is enough to replace traditional car?
So I used to drive an electric cars in California, and I can tell you it's fantastic, Maxime, to drive. Huh? So I would, when I'm in Nice, I used to rent those blue cars, those electric cars, and that's when you realize in the city it's fantastic. Nothing is beating it. When you're in California and going to the Yosemite, you on the way you watch your range. think that, but from a drivability point of view, it's fantastic. That's why the EV were positioned as sport and luxury cars 10 years ago, because it's difficult to build an EV like that. For 50,000 or 100,000 euro, you have a fantastic car, and where you would have to pay 500,000 or 1 million euro for the drivability. So not only carbon, Maxime, as well as drivability and fun.
Okay.
But today I'm driving an hybrid, so I should be honest as well. So
Okay, maybe one last question before we move to the second part, coming from Noel. The question is 72 TWh of battery storage capacity in electric vehicle only. Does the Earth have enough lithium for such a battery pack?
yeah.
So resources, do we have enough resources to cover the need? Yeah.
So for what I foresee is that for the next 2 to 4 years, let's say the games are done, though, as we say in French. So the technology we will use for the battery is going to be lithium-ion majority. And beyond that, we will have to look at other way to store the energy. So we are not finished with new chemistry, and because of course it could damage the environment if we start to extract the lithium at any cost for the environment. The other thing that I would like to say is that I started at IFP actually in the reservoir department. So the people who are looking for oil in the ground, and people used to say, "Oh, we don't have enough oil." It's only a matter of price and investment. So the technology will come to get lithium out of the ground, even if we have to go deeper. So we have, technically, we have, I guess, is enough lithium on the planet for all the cars we want to make for the next century. The only question is how much is it going to cost? Because if we have to pay 1 million euro for a battery, we will not have those 100 million electric vehicles I picture there. I would like to start a second part with an introduction on Huawei. I don't know if you're familiar with Huawei. Maybe you've heard about Huawei in the news. And of course, Huawei is famous for information technology. We pride ourselves in being in the top 10 for innovations for last year, and we hope to do even better this year. So innovation, it has been a priority for the past 25 years, and we are doubling down. And that's leading at the current positions for Huawei. So that's the business unit you see. So how is Huawei organized? So we have the business unit. Then we have what we call the 2012 lab. So 2012 is we want a research lab ready for the end of the world. So to go beyond the day-to-day business, we want to go to see what we could bring for the next 10, 20, 30 years. And of course, we want to reuse as quickly as possible the findings from this lab. And so we have two directions for this lab. And I'm in the Nuremberg Research Center, that's the German lab. And Empower started in 2018, and it's got two legacies. So one legacy and one internal customers. It's a digital power as a legacy, and intelligent automotive solution business unit is the customer. So what does it mean? It means that for intelligent automotive solutions, we want to look at the complete vehicle, starting with of course the operating system. So with the story from Huawei, that's where you think we will start operating system to make to connect the car with the rest of the world. Then we work on the hardware to connect the car with the rest of the world. It's the Internet of Vehicle division. Then we have my customer mobility powertrain. It's not only powertrain, it's mobility, because powertrain, Huawei has been doing powertrain for servers for 20 years. When you add wheels, it's a bit different. So that's what we have here. and we've built officially we started the business unit in 2018, but we've been working on the portfolio since 2015. And we have, of course, you've heard about our operating system, but what we created as well is a special ecosystem for the vehicle apps. And the last one, it's the cloud business. So that's the fifth. And for Empower, I talk about legacy a lot. So we started looking at the expertise that we had from telecom, from the solar inverter business, and from the energy management business applied to telecom. And we look at how we could reuse that for electric vehicles. So then, you know, the needs of electric vehicles, onboard charger, motor control units, and battery management system. So it meant that when Huawei started in 2018, it already had a lot of robust technology available. And voilà, that's where we are with the current portfolio. So from e-motor, as I told you, from the gearbox to the battery. So e-powertrain, a battery management system, cloud BMS, onboard charger, all the charging ecosystem. So off-board, onboard charger, and wireless charger. So for off-board charger, we sell charging modules to our customers who make their own charging stations. So it's energy providers, well known in France and in Europe, who are setting up their charging network. And for V2X, so for Huawei V2X, it's a great opportunity to use those technologies and to apply that portfolio. You should look at the portfolio as a tool for that V2X ecosystem. So I promise you I will give you concrete example after the buzzwords. So for the cloud BMS, it's available. It's starting in China, and then the question is, what do we need to change to make it compatible with Europe, and or how do we create a command cloud? Of course, with data protections, we have to have specific solutions for each continent and every country, if not every customer. Then we have the all-in-one charging concepts. So that's where we talk about the robustness of the grid and the investments. The one way to save on the investments is to try to reuse those investments with an holistic approach for charging. And then there is a nice application of that how we could make charging for EV available for everyone. It would be to have wireless power transfer on a high. So for BMS Cloud, the use cases. So if you want to work with your energy management and you want to enhance it with the cloud, because of course you would expect the cloud to improve everything. Sorry, I spent too long, not long, but too long enough in the Silicon Valley. Of course, the cloud will make the Earth better. And so we need the cloud, we need the Internet of Things, so we need the technology, we need every hardware connected, and then we need to have artificial intelligence tools. So what will it bring us? It will bring us safer battery. So how? So you've heard about state of charge, state of health. So if you have a cloud, I guarantee you will be able to have a higher accuracy for your state of health and for your state of charge. You will be able to anticipate failure on your cells in your battery before you get a failure at battery level, and you will be able to protect, to take actions to protect your battery. And ultimately, you would be able to diagnose and understand where the problem is coming from. And so that would lead to the advantages you would expect. So from V2X point of view, I like all of them with the BMS cloud, and you would have guessed several of them. So one that is maybe spin here with a negative tone is to resolve disputes. I will turn it with a positive spin to say that the cloud BMS could actually help you to track the value of your car. When the battery is representing 50% of the value of your car, one of the issues that you could have is that when you resell your car, people will say, well, I don't know what you did with your car. I don't know what you did with your battery. Maybe you did fast charging all the time, damaging your battery. And you will be able to say, oh, but I have Huawei Cloud BMS, and I can tell you how I use my battery. And you can have a certificate, for instance, telling you that your battery was carefully managed, carefully handled. So that will bring high value to your car. So, and that's what we are seeing already, is that with the electric vehicles which are connected to the cloud, the resale value is, it's not of course the only reason why the resale value is being steady, but one of the reasons why the resale value is good is because people can access their data. It's their data, so they can do whatever they want with it, and they can show the potential buyer that the value of the car is there. A bit like a diagnostic we will do with a car today. And so how does it work? So we monitor, we analyze, then we make predictive predictions, and then we can take actions. So predictive maintenance, 5 years, those were two buzzwords as well. Now it's being used to monitor the cars and to protect the battery. So it's a big topic in China with the pressure we have in China, because we have the millions of EVs that you would expect. Europe is selling as many EVs as in China. I think last year it was, maybe even we sold more EVs in Europe as in China last year. And so we don't want to have even one car catching fire because of a battery thermal event. That's very bad. So even if no one dies, that's damaged property. Of course, it's bad as well, because it's taking away trust from the people into the electric vehicles. So, but with Cloud BMS, then you will be able to anticipate that and to take actions. And yeah, when I've seen the demonstrations of the Cloud BMS, it's a very powerful tool to anticipate those problems. All-in-one charging. So all-in-one charging, when you look at your EV, you can charge it, you can connect it to the rest of the world in many ways. Sorry, in many ways. So let me show you at least one. Or all of them at once. So the universal AC charging, that's the AC charging, that's the first well-known. So why AC charging? Well, that's because the grid is AC in most places. So that's sometimes it's the traditional 3 or 7 kilowatt AC charger. Then we have the possibility to have a high voltage spare battery. With some concepts, so you could expect to have I should not say fuel station, but energy station having spare batteries available where you can plug them into the car. You have the vehicle to load. You want to make a barbecue or a hot pot on the picture, so you can plug it to your electric car. Then we have, of course, the vehicle to grid and vehicle to home DC. And very developed in China, it's the V2V connection. So you can use that to charge your car if you're stuck somewhere far away from a charging station. It's much cheaper than to call for a truck to carry your car. or if one of your friends has an access to a photovoltaic network and he's got his electricity for free, then he could recharge you for free or for a fee. That's where we could get what we call the Uberization of your battery, another way to amortize your capex with your battery. And then the other ones, so sometimes they look like gadgets. So not DC charging, of course. DC charging, that's the fast charging method. But the portable photovoltaic panels and the solar roof, it looks like a gimmicks. But if you remember what we had to do with gasoline and diesel engines, it's sometimes the efficiency of the powertrain system is not done only by revolution with plus 20% in efficiency. Sometimes it's done by gradual steps, increasing the efficiency and the energy gains 1% at a time. And talking about the V2X applied to the home. So if you look at the state of the art, I'm sorry, let me go through the animations. I will have to come back. Yes. So you get the conclusion directly. So when you charge with your solar, when you get electricity from your solar panel, so you lose energy when you convert that energy to your through your inverters. If you have a buffer for your battery, which is a smart way to do it, then you would end up losing some energy as well, going through your in and out your battery. And of course, you will have to convert to DC within when you get inside your battery. So 84%. So you see that even with a very simple use cases, we have 16% that we could on which we could work. If we get half of that, that's think about it at a country level. That's already massive, and that would be good for your grid as well. So let me go through the example as well of wireless power transfer. So wireless power transfer 10 years ago, it was a gadget. So it was unnecessary luxury and not efficient, not always considered safe. So when you look at where we are today, I would like to highlight to everyone that so when you look at premium charging solutions, so either you would have, let's assume first that it's cumbersome for you to carry those big cable to charge your car. So you can either have someone to plug the cable into your car. I know that in some areas it's happening, so it's a job to plug people's car. So in some areas, of course, you know about those robots. So a robot with a cable that will look for your port, your plug, and would plug it through. So a third solution is to have a wireless power transfer. So we charge you move your car on the plate, and so then you have wireless power transfer between the ground and your and a coil inside your car. So 10 years ago, efficiencies were far below 90%. Now, in most cases, we manage to be above 90%. Not only that, but if you're not exactly aligned, the efficiencies still stay above 90%. So it's not plus or minus 1 millimeter. Now we are talking about alignment in dozens of centimeters. So it's becoming realistic. Safety. So would you leave your kid playing near your car while you're charging? Maybe 10 years ago, no. But today we have foreign object detection and live object detection. And here in Nuremberg, with our test, we managed to go pretty low with very small objects. And the part of the safety is, of course, electromagnetic emissions. So with an 11 kilowatt wireless power transfer, so we are on the safe side. Of course, if tomorrow people wanted to go to very high power transfer, we would have to work harder to insulate the electromagnetic emissions. And yes, So, and with automated wireless power transfer, alignments will be easy, and compatibility granted for the platform. I'm talking to the OEMs here. And to conclude, so I would like to say that so electrification, yes, it's coming. It should be part of the equation for to reuse all those renewable energy we have. I foresee and I wish that we have a mix for the next 20 years for hybrid. Of course, we have a lot of work to do to improve the electric powertrain, especially starting with the connectivity and interoperability. So we still have the same market drivers that you have here on the right, the 6+1 market drivers that have always been our powertrain market driver for dozens of years. So it's just that the units are changing now, maybe. The appealing factor, remember, when we started to have electric vehicles, people said, oh, now the powertrain is done. We don't need to work on the powertrain. The cool stuff is to have your app on a big screen inside the car. Yes, it's cool, but powertrain is still cool because it's with the drivability I was talking about and the way you can connect it to your grid, that's people are going to save money at the end and having a fun life. So thank you very much for following me that far, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
So we have many questions. I'll start with with the general one regarding Huawei in general.
Yes.
Santosh is asking a question about. He's telling you have everything, almost everything, to build your own car. So is there any plan to complete in the car market directly, or your plan is to keep a position like the OEM partner?
Thank you very much. That's maybe the second question I asked Huawei 2 years ago after how are you doing? It's so 2018 actually they made the decision to go into the tier 1 supplier business. So they wish to. The question was, should Huawei be a tier 2 supplier? Should it be a tier 1 supplier? Should it be an OEM making cars? So because Huawei, of course, is making some consumer products, so why not go to the full product? And actually, Huawei consider that making a car it's a business, and they have expertise as a components and system supplier in that area. And so they committed to their first customers in China that they will focus on being a system supplier. So that's. So yes, you're right. We could make a car. We are very happy to support our customers to make cars. That's a lot of fun, and you've got more variety as well.
So you can share this with the management after this webinar.
Yeah.
We have so now we'll talk about some technical questions. We have again Patrick Oberto asking a small question. No calculation this time.
Okay, Patrick.
Lithium. So the question is just, can we recycle easily the lithium? Yeah, how we recycle the lithium.
How do you recycle the battery? Is it the question?
Yes. So.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, recycling the lithium, that will be the battery. That will be one way to get access to lithium, and that will be one way to avoid pollution as well if you don't let your battery in the field. So people are talking more about giving a second life to the battery, because automotive batteries, they have very strict specifications, and because if your battery is not so efficient, then that's not good on the car, because it means that you're carrying a lot of dead weight. But if you're at your home, why don't you have a second-hand battery being carefully monitored with Huawei Cloud to have a second life for your battery? You know how to recycle the components in the battery. You take nitrogen bath at minus, I don't know, 200, 150 degrees Celsius. You put maybe less than that, and you put your battery inside, and with a hammer you make powder, and that's how you take back the components.
Yes.
So it's better to give a second life, I think.
Yes. Okay, so just to give the chance to other questions we do have. We have a question from Julien Trost. How can we keep the flexibility of using a vehicle while doing V2X? So Julien is telling, I want to be able to make my car at any time without the fear that my battery is empty because it's provided energy to my house.
Ah, yes.
Combine this and that.
So that's the beauty of the new technologies like the BMS cloud, is that today because we are not always accurate in the way we calculate the state of charge of your battery, so we reduce the limits of your battery. So we lose. So not because we're never too sure. When we tell you the status of your battery, we are being conservative. So meaning we are taking away energy from your dashboard to tell you that you go charging while you still have energy in your battery. So that's the first thing. So, and Julien, there is a mode that Tesla enabled, and maybe all OEMs could do something like that. Is that we know we have you can take more energy to make 50 or 100 kilometers extra from your battery. But if you do that too many times, it's when you go to the bottom of your state of charge that you will damage your battery. So, but if you do it once for an emergency, that should be okay. Don't do it every day. So that should be a mode, or emergency mode, that would allow you to go home if you have to. That would be the first thing.
Okay. Okay. Another question, Olivier. So from Noel Kignelman. Okay. So the question is, first, thank you for the presentation. And his question is, which are the Huawei V2X technology are already available on the European market?
European market. So on the European market, Huawei is starting with the automotive, with the powertrain side. Huawei is present on the V2X market from the other side of the fence with the photovoltaic business. So Huawei is number one in Europe for the inverter business. So that's what you could buy. It's those very smart connected inverter for your house or for your field of solar panels to connect to the grid, or as well a new product we are launching. It's the special battery that you could have in your house to connect to your photovoltaic. So with our partners, that's where we are now. Give us a couple of years for the other products.
Yeah, and for the innovation. So
and for the innovation that we hope we will be hitting the streets. But yes.
Still other questions, Olivier. So this is from question from Cyril Juvenel. So he said, first, hello, Olivier. Okay, do you see limitation to the whole electrical system, for instance, for heavy duty construction machines in North Sweden, for example, because of the low temperature? So is there any limitation? System?
Yes. Yeah, that's another good question. It's yes, you know that when you charge a battery, the current lithium-ion battery, the range is very narrow. You can only charge your battery between 15 and 25 degrees Celsius, roughly. So when you charge a battery, first you have to heat up your battery. So that's the first limit, and that's the first limit. But I think there are solutions for that. We could heat up the battery. So now we start to have a system overlooking the battery management that take that into account. You don't have to leave your car in your garage at 10 degrees Celsius. So you can leave it outside. And but the first EVs had that problem that they couldn't be charged when they would have to wait for spring sometimes to be charged. So in some cases. But that's what we have turned that page. It's a bit like the diesel fuel frozen in the filter in the 80s. Now there are solutions for the thermal management of the battery. But it's true, it's a big topic, and it's taking a lot of energy from the car.
Another question from Pierre Gronier. So a question is about the V2V.
Yes.
Use case of China as mentioned. For the moment, one of the main issue of electric vehicle is their relatively small autonomy. How could China market use V2V? Here it seems that people don't want to share their battery capacity. They mostly want some, but not give. How is it different in China?
So there are several apps on the business models. I've not seen them. I wanted to see them, but I've not been able to go back to China.
We cannot travel now to China.
Yeah. That's what I've seen, and what my colleagues have confirmed is that so you have actually, it's a business, and some people will go around and charge your car from another EV. The first emergency cars to charge your car were actually diesel trucks making electricity out of the diesel engine to charge the battery. And so that's one thing. The second thing is that some people are willing, if they get access to cheap electricity, or even electricity for which you have to pay, they are willing to use their personal car and let you access with a QR code their car to give you 5 kilowatt-hour, for instance. So I've not seen it with my own eyes, Pierre. So I'll rely on the hearsay. I've not seen it. I would like to see if it's just for YouTube or Tencent that we have those videos, or if it's really happening. And I'm not sure about the scale either of those businesses. Small, for the time being, they are local and small businesses doing that.
Okay, so here in the chat, I have a question from Rafael Medina. So he used to be my student. So hi, Rafael.
Hello, Rafael.
The question is about Tesla, so it's not about Huawei. He's asking, Tesla is at the moment of the bottom JD Power list. Why do you think is Tesla having so many issues in terms of quality? Do you think the EV tech is not as robust as we think?
I have a lot of admiration for Tesla, so it's difficult to talk against Tesla. So they made something fantastic, especially with their software and their powertrain. There was but I can make a joke about it, Rafael, but in China, there was a famous company that I will not mention. It's not Huawei, but they started to make, one day they decided, oh yeah, we make that and that component. What could be difficult? We had 4 wheels, we'll make a car, we'll make an electric car. And then they were play on words in Chinese, because to translate it into French, that will be, before you make a good EV car, maybe you should learn how to make a car. That was so making a car. That's not easy. So of course, so from a quality, people expect very high quality from their cars now. So if you start to make a car company in 10 years, so it's a startup. So if you make small volumes, you can check everything by hand. But if you start to go to big volumes, then you have to follow the best practice that the best OEMs have been owning over decades. So I know we call about legacy company, and it's not as cool as startups, but it's that's quality management. It takes years to handle. So yes, before you make an EV, you should learn how to make a V.
Okay. Yeah, we almost ask all the questions from the audience. I have a simple question. So mainly you are working with the car makers. So are you planning also to expand your work with, for example, with public transportation or heavy duty projects? Or
yes, I am.
Or are you focusing only on private cars?
Yes, for the time being, we are focusing on passenger cars customers because it's we want to be so Huawei wants to be the best every time they make something, so, which is great. Of course, it means that you need a lot of resources to get there internally, and we want to deliver the best portfolio and it's not a niche on the passenger cars. It's a big market already with very specific needs. If we go to trucks and if we go to bicycles, to e-bikes, that's very different specifications. I would love to go to trucks, because for powertrains, that's going to be a very rich domain in the future. And public transportations, for local transportations, that should be ideal for electrification. So we should combine maybe with hydrogen or natural gas. Yeah, that should be fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, so there are many trends for the future.
Yes, one step at a time, Wafay, one step at a time.
Absolutely. Okay. For Mei-Ling and Sabine, we have no more questions. So I think so. Thank you very much, Olivier.
Thank you very much for the opportunity and for all the questions from everyone. So thank you so much. It was great having you there. And
yeah, I
yes.
think just I will give the floor to Sabine to maybe
Sabine, yes.
to close properly. My assignment was question and answers, and really thank you. You answer all the questions brilliantly. Thank you also for the audience for the very good questions. So it was really a nice exchange during this last hour.
Thank you, Wafay. I think that all has been said with the last words. So once again, many thanks to our guest, Olivier Lobet. Thank you all for joining us tonight and submitting your technical questions. Olivier has authorized us to share his presentation with you. So we will send it to you in the coming days with a replay of this session. And now, to conclude, maybe Christine, if you please take the floor for the last words.
Thank you, Sabine. Thank you very much, Olivier. It was really an interesting presentation, and you had a lot of questions. Thank you to everybody for having attended this webinar and for your question.
Thank you, Christine.
So, next webinar will be held on April 6th at the same time. It will be given by Laurent Escarré, GOP 1995, and he will deal with the role of subsurface in the energy transition. I hope to see you at this next webinar. Thank you, Olivier.
Thank you, Christine. Bye. Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.